She was sitting on a cold bench in broad daylight, crying so hard her shoulders shook. An elderly white woman, barefoot, clutching a hospital bracelet, while hundreds of people walked past her without slowing down. Suits, parents, police. No one stopped. Then, a black girl did. She hesitated, late, broke, already carrying more weight than a kid her age should, but something about the woman's fear wouldn't let her walk away. When the girl reached out and took her hand, the woman looked up and whispered, "Please, don't leave me." That single moment would expose a truth no one was ready to face. Because if everyone saw her, why did no one stop? Comment and tell us where you're watching from. And subscribe for more stories that refuse to stay silent. Aaliyah's days were measured in responsibility, not childhood. School came first, then errands, then home, always home. Where worry lived quietly in unpaid bills and tired silence, she had learned to move fast, think faster, and never ask for more than what was already missing. Being raised by Denise Carter meant strength was shown in small ways: early mornings, late shifts, and the unspoken rule that you survive without complaining. That afternoon, Aaliyah was already running behind. Her phone buzzed with reminders she couldn't ignore, and her pockets held almost nothing. Every step told her to keep moving, to mind her business, to not invite trouble into a life that couldn't afford it. That was the normal rhythm. That was safety. The woman on the bench broke that rhythm. Up close, the crying wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and desperate. Margaret Whitmore looked less confused than terrified, like someone who knew exactly what was happening but had no control left to stop it. Her hands shook. Her eyes scanned faces that refused to meet hers. The hospital bracelet on her wrist didn't explain why she was alone or why no one seemed willing to ask. Aaliyah felt the weight of being seen in a space where people like her were noticed for the wrong reasons. She felt it again when a passerby slowed down, watched, and kept walking. Something about that choice lingered. Helping wasn't the dangerous part. Being noticed was. And as Aaliyah sat there holding a stranger's hand in public view, she had no way of knowing that someone else, someone powerful, was already looking for the woman everyone else ignored. Whatever had been done to her wasn't finished yet. What began on that bench refused to stay quiet. By the next morning, the air around Aaliyah felt different, heavier, watchful. People stared longer. Doors closed quicker. The city had a way of reminding black children that kindness could turn into suspicion overnight. Denise noticed it too. The way eyes followed her daughter when they walked together. The way concern hardened into judgment the moment questions were asked. They tried the official route first. The building looked clean, calm, reassuring, designed to make doubt feel unreasonable. Inside, authority spoke softly and slowly, the way it does when it's already decided not to listen. Elaine Porter smiled without warmth, hands folded, posture rehearsed. The explanation was smooth, polished, detached from the fears still clinging to Margaret's hands. Then the mask slipped. "This isn't your concern. Take the girl and leave." The words landed like a slap. Aaliyah felt something burn behind her ribs, sharper than fear. She had done everything right. She had stopped. She had helped. And still, the message was clear. Stay in your place. She didn't. "She was crying and you left her there." The room stiffened. Denise's breath caught. Margaret's shoulders shook. That single sentence fractured the calm, exposing what politeness had been hiding. Eyes shifted. Papers shuffled. The truth didn't disappear. It made people uncomfortable. That was when power entered the room. Richard Whitmore Jr. didn't rush. He didn't need to. Control followed him naturally, like gravity. His presence sucked oxygen from the space, the way money and confidence often do. He didn't look at Aaliyah first. He looked at Margaret, like reclaiming property. "You don't belong with them. You know that." Every instinct in Denise screamed danger. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was ownership, entitlement sharpened into threat. She stepped forward, voice steady but loud enough to be heard. "You will not intimidate my child." The tension snapped tight, stretching seconds into something unbearable. People nearby pretended not to listen, but no one left. Fear has a way of freezing witnesses in place. Aaliyah felt it then, not just for herself, but for Margaret. For what happened after doors closed. For what silence had protected. The truth surfaced in fragments. Missing records, conflicting timelines, a system designed to exhaust questions until people gave up. Racism didn't announce itself. It hid behind procedure, behind patience, behind phrases like policy and protocol. Each delay added pressure, each dismissal fed the sense that this fight was meant to be lost quietly. Margaret's breathing changed. Something shifted in her posture. The fear that had folded her inward straightened, just slightly, into resolve. Her voice trembled, but it carried. I was left there because I stopped obeying. The room went still. That sentence cracked everything open. Not confusion, defiance. Not weakness, truth. The pieces aligned too quickly to ignore now. Control wasn't concern. Isolation wasn't care. And the little girl who stopped had stepped into something far bigger than herself. Outside, phones were already out. Inside, authority scrambled to regain footing. Elaine's calm evaporated. Richard's certainty thinned. Denise squeezed Aaliyah's shoulder once, grounding, protective, proud. But nothing was resolved yet. The pressure didn't lift. It intensified. Because when systems are exposed, they don't surrender quietly. They push back harder, desperate to restore order. And as the room buzzed with urgency and fear, one thing became clear. This wasn't the end of the danger. It was the moment before the collision. The room no longer belonged to the people who were supposed to control it. What started as a quiet attempt to dismiss concern had turned into something volatile, something public, something dangerous for those who relied on silence to stay powerful. Aaliyah stood near the edge of it all, heart pounding, aware that every adult instinct around her wanted this moment erased. Papers lay scattered. Phones were raised now. Fear had shifted direction. Margaret stood at the center, no longer shrinking. The weight that once pressed her inward, now pushed outward, heavy with everything she had been forced to carry alone. The truth had been contained for too long, wrapped in procedure and polite indifference. Now it was pressing against the walls, demanding space. Richard stepped forward, jaw tight, eyes sharp with desperation rather than control. He spoke loudly, confident the room would still bend. "This stops right now. She's coming with me." The words echoed, but they didn't land the way he expected. Denise moved without hesitation, placing herself between him and the two people he was trying to claim. Her voice didn't shake. It cut. "You don't own her, and you don't decide her life anymore." Something broke in that moment. Not glass, not order. Illusion. Elaine tried to regain authority, voice rising, brittle under pressure. Procedures were cited, protocols thrown like shields. But no one was listening the way they had before. The room had seen too much. Margaret lifted her head fully now. Her hands trembled, but her voice carried with the force of someone who had survived the worst and was done being quiet. "I was locked away because I was incompetent, not because I was confused." The sentence hit harder than any accusation. It reframed everything. This wasn't protection. It was punishment for resistance, for age, for vulnerability, for being a woman whose life was easier to manage than to respect. Aaliyah felt the shift then. The exact second power cracked. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the sudden realization, spreading through the room, that this story would not stay contained, that witnesses had multiplied, that silence had expired. Richard's composure finally snapped. His voice rose, sharp with threat, aimed where he thought it would still work. "You have no idea who you're messing with." That was the mistake, because authority didn't answer him. Accountability did. Thomas stepped forward at last, voice steady, unmistakable, loud enough to cut through every excuse still clinging to the air. "This ends today, and it ends with consequences." No one moved after that, not because they were told not to, but because the direction of the moment had been decided. Control had shifted hands, and everyone could feel it. Phones continued recording. Whispers spread. What had been hidden was now exposed in real time. Aaliyah looked at Margaret, who met her eyes with something deeper than gratitude. Recognition, survival, proof. This wasn't rescue, it was reckoning. And as the room absorbed what had just happened, one truth settled in with brutal clarity. The worst injustice wasn't what had been done to her. It was how long everyone had allowed it to happen. The noise eventually faded, but the weight of what happened didn't. Aaliyah walked out of that building with the same worn shoes and the same quiet strength she had carried in. But the world around her felt different. Not safer, not kinder, just exposed. What had been hidden behind procedure and politeness had been dragged into the open, and there was no pretending it hadn't happened. For Margaret Whitmore, the change was visible. She wasn't rushed. She wasn't silenced. She stood upright, steady, no longer treated like a problem to be managed. The fear didn't disappear overnight, but dignity returned the moment people stopped speaking over her. Accountability followed soon after. The system that failed her was forced to answer, and Richard Whitmore Jr. lost the protection silence had given him. Power didn't vanish. It shifted, publicly and permanently. Elaine Porter no longer controlled the narrative. Policies were reviewed, records questioned. What had once been dismissed as concern was now recognized as warning signs, ignored too long. And Thomas Reynolds ensured that this story didn't end quietly or comfortably for the people who depended on no one paying attention. At home, Denise Carter returned to the same responsibilities she never got a break from. Bills didn't disappear, life didn't reset, but something important settled between mother and daughter. A shared understanding that doing the right thing doesn't guarantee protection, only truth. And truth carries a cost. This wasn't a victory wrapped in relief. It was a reminder. Racism doesn't always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it sits on a bench in daylight crying, while hundreds of people choose not to see it. Sometimes it survives because everyone assumes someone else will handle it. One child didn't. Aaliyah stopped. And because she did, the silence broke. The real question isn't what happened to them. It's what keeps happening every day to people who never get a witness. When dignity is tested in front of you, will you keep walking or will you stop, knowing exactly what it might cost? If this story made you pause, like it, and share it with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment with your thoughts. We read every one. And subscribe to Black Community Struggles for stories that refuse to stay silent.